Today, we'll be taking an in-depth look at the Silent Hill 2 remake, specifically through a Freudian and sometimes Jungian lens. So don't expect theories based on verifiable information from old Team Silent members. This is just my own personal schizophrenic interpretation of Silent Hill 2. Although I hate remakes and remasters, I was genuinely amazed by just how faithful, respectful, and competent this remake was. A lot of credit has to be given to Bloober Team for respecting not only the source material, but the fans of the original game as well, as they were willing to make some pretty significant changes to maintain the artistic vision of the original after some criticism from fans. It's extremely rare for me to say this, but if a newcomer to this game were to ask me which version they should play, I might very well say this remake. It really was that good. But anyway, let's get into it. Our protagonist, James, looks intently into this bathroom mirror. At first, he's shaking. He seems genuinely petrified. As he looks up at himself, he seems more so inquisitive, detached. He touches his own face, as if he doesn't fully recognize himself, as if he is a stranger to himself. In many ways, he is. The petrified James we see in the first few frames, and the James we play as for the continuation of the game, might as well be, philosophically, completely different people, as the James we see throughout the game has deliberately repressed aspects of himself and therefore exists in a fractured, incomplete state. The first scene does such a good job at setting the tone of this game, and it's here we get to listen to the amazing, slower, more droning Silent Hill 2 soundtrack, which has been beautifully and respectfully remade by the original composer, Akira Yamaoka. Every single piece of music in this game blends in so well with the overall experience that there's no way any other composer could have led the charge here musically. We then get the iconic beginning monologue of this game.
In my restless dreams, I see that town. Silent Hill. You promised you'd take me there again someday, but you never did. Well, I'm alone there now, in our special place, waiting for you.
I got a letter. The name on the envelope said Mary. My wife's name. It's ridiculous. Couldn't possibly be true. That's what I keep telling myself. Mary died of that damn disease 3 years ago. So then why am I looking for her? Our special place. What could she mean? This whole town was our special place. Could Mary really be here? Is she really alive?
James has received a letter from his late wife, Mary, asking him to meet her in their special place in Silent Hill. I'll admit, I was a little worried about how this remake would handle the voice acting, but fortunately, it's exceptionally well done. Salome Gunnarsdottir, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, who plays Mary, perfectly captures her kind yet slightly shaky, almost fragile tone. Luke Roberts, who's playing James, delivers a performance that is detached and slightly monotone, but yet layered with a subtle hurt behind it, sometimes even dipping down into almost a whisper, showing a layer of complexity behind James's seemingly more stoic exterior. Actually playing the game now, it, looks very good. There's a lot of rightful criticism hailed at Unreal Engine, but this game looks absolutely beautiful. And more importantly, the fog, arguably the most iconic and vital element of Silent Hill's visuals, is honestly perfect. It really has a presence here. It's heavy and suffocating. It has weight to it, almost as if you can feel that striking cold dampness. Like those winter mornings where you breathe in the outside air for the first time and feel that piercing cold in your lungs. But the biggest change by far has to be this over-the-shoulder camera angle. This, for the most part, works perfectly well. As you'll see later, the game is not attempting to be more action-oriented. It is not trying to be Resident Evil. However, this new camera, which is consistent throughout the whole game, means we have lost some interesting set pieces we would see in the original game. Moving on though, through this gate into the cemetery, we are introduced to Angela.
Excuse me.
I'm sorry. I was just...
Hey, it's okay. I didn't mean to scare you. I'm kind of lost.
Lost?
Yeah, I'm looking for Silent Hill. Is this the right way?
Yeah. It's hard to see with this fog, but there's only the one road. You can't miss it.
Thanks.
But... I think you should stay away. This town, there's something wrong with it. And it's not just the fog either.
Angela looks virtually the same as she did in the original, and acts virtually the same as well. The first thing she does after being scared by James is apologize and justify herself, even though she was doing nothing wrong. She's very nervous and has trouble finding the right words to express herself. She holds her hands up to her chest and plays with her fingers, most likely a subconscious way to soothe herself.
Is it dangerous?
Maybe. It's kind of hard to explain, but...
I'll be careful.
I'm not lying.
No, I believe you. It's just... I guess I don't really care if it's dangerous or not. I'm going either way.
But why?
I'm looking for... someone. Someone very important to me.
Me too. I'm looking for my mama. I mean, my mother. It's been so long since I've seen her. I thought my father and brother were here, but I can't find them either. I'm sorry, it's not your problem.
No, I hope you find them.
Yeah, you too.
When James sort of dismisses her warning about the town, she feels the need to impose herself by saying that she isn't lying, and later calls her mother Mama by accident. I believe this highlights the lack of emotional maturation and stunted psychological development in her personality. As we follow Angela's story, you'll see that she carries a lot of trauma with her, which, from a pseudo-Freudian point of view, most likely caused a sort of psychological arrested development, causing her to live in that developmental stage where her trauma occurred until it is resolved in some way. It's also important to note that she's looking for her mother, father, and brother in the cemetery. Perhaps, like James, she's also looking for someone who has already passed. On this church door it reads, "All have sinned and fall short of God's glory." This is an almost direct quote from the Bible. In some versions, the full quote reads, "For all have sinned and fall short of the glory of God, and all are justified freely by His grace through the redemption that came by Christ Jesus." I think this quote conveys well the underlying philosophical pessimism in Christianity, as philosophers like Schopenhauer have pointed out, that human beings are inherently imperfect and totally incapable of reaching any sort of divine perfection. And so you could say that Silent Hill will serve as a reflection of these sinners. The characters in this game will be confronted by their immense imperfection. Ultimately, however, the harshest judgment they face is not from the town, but from themselves. On our way towards Silent Hill, we pass by the spot where James originally gets his radio, his weapon, and fights the first enemy. These are now called memories, by the way. Little nods to the original game that serve as sort of collectibles. and it's something that shows the respect that Bloober Team had for the original game, which I really appreciate. This time, it happens inside a dilapidated house. Before we talk about the first enemy, I think now would be a good time to talk about the combat. I'm glad to say that James does not feel like some sort of action hero. Every attack is labored and enemies are resilient enough to make every encounter feel important and life-threatening, but not so resilient to where they just feel like impossible to beat damage sponges. I do have two complaints, however. First, I don't really like how James puts his weapon away and brings it up automatically when there are enemies nearby, essentially doing the job of the radio. The radio is an immersive and aesthetically fitting way of letting us know that there's an enemy in the area. However, you can just ignore it because James will just pull out his weapon when he's sort of close. But that's very minor and completely forgivable. What is not forgivable is the annoying red vignette that shows up when you're hurt. If this is not removed by the time this video comes out, I will make the typing rebellion look like a joke. James already gets visibly bloody and limps when he's hurt. You already have an immersive, non-intrusive way of letting the player know he's on low health, so I really don't see the point of this being here. On a more positive note, with the remaster, there's no more loading screens between rooms, meaning that it's a lot more difficult to just run away from encounters, which was something I definitely did in the original and made the game a little too easy. But now let's talk about this enemy, known as the Lying Figure. Its upper body is fully encased in skin, almost like a skin bag, where the lying figure is continually writhing around in, as if wanting to escape it, but of course is unable to. This could be meant to represent Mary's confinement during her hospitalization, and this theme of confinement is something you will see recurring in the design of most enemies. It could also, however, represent James's own feelings of confinement over his extremely sick and dependent wife. It's an unfortunate reality that these feelings of confinement or even resentment can come up when faced with an extremely sick and dependent loved one. Its main attack is this greenish, toxic bile it spews out. This might represent Mary's sickness itself, or perhaps the stinging words Mary directed at James in fits of anger, when of course confronted with her own mortality. The theme of confinement is bolstered by the fact that the creature designer, Masahiro Ito, has stated that he was inspired by BDSM clothing when designing this enemy. The real question is, when is Masahiro Ito not inspired by BDSM clothing? So that, paired with the fact that this enemy is wearing these very high heels, hints at some psychosexual element to this creature. Sexual desire does not simply disappear during times of suffering. It might even find new, pathological forms to emerge. James and Mary, both as individuals and as a couple, still desire to feel connected, to be intimate, and to see each other as desirable. However, due to her sickness and James's complicated, conflicting emotions during her hospitalization, that desire in James might be here manifesting in a more skewed form. Skewed by the presence of her illness, and probably by the constant looming presence of her pain and her likely death. Basically, men would rather fight a nightmarish horror than go to therapy. And they're right. Therapy be like, I'm angry. Sounds like you have a lot of anger. Over the radio, we hear Mary's voice, giving James the needed encouragement to go find her. After breaking every single window of every single car, we find a body that looks suspiciously like James. Actually, you'll find that every dead body you see throughout the game looks a lot like James. But why? Why would he see every dead body as himself? Perhaps we could see this as a representation of James's Freudian death drive, his thanatos. Sigmund Freud tells us that within the human consciousness resides a subconscious desire for some form of self-destruction, a desire to a simpler state of non-existence, a desire for death. Due to James's extreme mental turmoil and immense guilt, this death drive might manifest itself as a want for extreme punishment, or even the desire to be killed. And keep in mind, I think in James's case, it would be specifically manifested through being hurt by others, as I don't believe James would ever hurt himself. I don't believe his mental constitution would ever allow it. What James could feel guilty about and want to be punished for is a conversation we'll obviously have much later. But it is important for you to know now that guilt is what shapes a lot of James's mental framework. Anyway, next to the body, we find a set of matches for Neely's bar, so we make our way towards it. In this bar, we find the infamous quote on the covered window. "There was a hole here. It's gone now." This is a quote whose meaning has been talked about and discussed basically to death at this point. One simple theory is that, since we find this at a bar, that it refers to James's possible alcoholism while Mary was in the hospital and, of course, after her death, alluding to James's drinking to fill the void left by his wife's absence. To back this up, we can point to the original game where James says, when examining these bottles, "Liquor bottles. I don't need that right now. It's not that I don't drink. In fact, I drink a fair bit, to get away from the pain, the loneliness, but the drinking never changes anything." But another theory, which I think holds a little more merit, is that it refers to the large chasms that James has to plunge into later in the game. Chasms which I believe are meant to symbolically represent his confrontation with his unconscious mind, and possibly his jungian shadow. We'll talk about it later. And so the hole being gone would signify that James has blocked access to his unconscious, which I believe is definitely the case. Or maybe to unify both theories, perhaps it's the drinking that helps fill those chasms of deeper, intimidating introspective thought. In the bar, your objective is to fix this jukebox. It's not really much of a puzzle, it's basically just a fetch quest, which frankly is a little bit disappointing. But I do like the fact that it gives you a reason to more thoroughly explore the actual town of Silent Hill. The town in this remake is absolutely beautiful. You'll hear me say that a lot, but really, it feels like there was truly life here, but it just disappeared. Not like it slowly died and the people simply left. It's as if there was some rapture-like event which ceased all life, leaving the town perpetually stuck in the time of its occurrence. Also, you get to go to Happy Burger. In order to get the jukebox working, one of the main places you have to go to is this little apartment complex. And when you reach the top floor, you hear this new soundtrack that sounds like labored breathing. This could obviously relate to Mary and how her illness might have caused difficulty breathing. But difficulty breathing most likely relates to the most important factor of James's story, which obviously we're not going to talk about just yet. Here you get the button for the jukebox, and in order to get it, James has to stick his hand in this hole and fish it out. If you've ever played the original, you know that James sticking his hand in miscellaneous holes is a constant theme. If we tried to look at this through a Freudian lens, this could symbolize some latent sexual anxieties, or perhaps more accurately for James, some sort of sexually related guilt. Holes are often interpreted as feminine symbols in Freudian psychoanalysis, representing the womb or just generally female anatomy. By inserting his hand, James could symbolically be confronting complex feelings tied to his relationship with Mary, such as, for example, guilt for desiring physical intimacy while she was ill, or, since it's heavily implied by James's face that he is disgusted, guilt for not desiring any sort of physical intimacy while she was ill, guilt for perhaps being disgusted by her in that state. After getting all the necessary items to fix the jukebox, we play the record and hear a familiar track.
Park on the lake. We spent the whole day there. Just the two of us staring at the water.
We get this beautiful new cutscene that showcases the remake's willingness to sort of stew in its own melancholy, which feels very fitting for James's story. It captures the essence of Silent Hill not as simply violent and hostile, but as something a little more complex. These more quiet, reflective moments paint the town as a place steeped in loneliness and sorrow, yet with a certain ethereal quality. After all, this was once the special place of a young couple, James and Mary. It's only natural that James wouldn't perceive it as entirely oppressive. Instead, he almost carries with him a sense of wistful nostalgia, viewing Silent Hill through a different lens compared to other Silent Hill protagonists. A lens personally clouded by love and, of course, grief. With that done, we now have to go to the next section of the game, the Woodside Apartments. Aesthetically, the apartments look very different from the original. Although they look very good, because the whole game looks very good, I found that they lost a certain liminal quality that was present in the original. And I just think they look a little bit more mundane, a bit more forgettable. I can't quite put my finger on it or put it into words, so I'll just hope that you know what I mean. They are great, however, in terms of gameplay and game design. They all converge into this main courtyard, where you'll find plenty of shortcuts which will open up the apartments more as you progress. Not too dissimilar from something you might see in Dark Souls. Yes, I know Dark Souls didn't invent this, but it's the best example I can think of. Moving on though, you get the flashlight from what looks like Mary's clothes. If we look at this scene symbolically, the flashlight would represent illumination, clarity, and the fact that we find it on Mary's clothes could mean that what James is repressing, that which resides deep within his subconscious, is intrinsically linked with Mary. We also see here the next enemy of this game, the Mannequins, a pair of fleshy mannequin legs on top of another pair of mannequin legs. I think the psychosexual Freudian subtones are very strong with this one. Freud might have psychoanalyzed the appearance of this creature in James's subconscious as a manifestation of a highly repressed libido, taking then an unhealthy, depersonalized, grotesque form. After all, the Silent Hill 2 novel states plainly that this monster was born out of pure lust. And I think it's important to key in on the depersonalized factor. Mary's clothes on a headless mannequin,
These clothes.
the faceless pair of legs. Mary had likely become so dependent, so consumed by her illness. In James's mind, she might have begun to lose some amount of personhood. And of course, those feelings themselves would be a source of immense guilt. From a gameplay perspective, the mannequins are easily my favorite enemies. Their behavior is really unpredictable and clever, and keep you constantly on edge. They might charge at you aggressively, but they're just as likely to run away and hide to set up a surprise attack. They alone are almost the reason why you always have to stay on your toes when exploring a new room, so they definitely get an A. But I'm not ranking these enemies, I don't even know why I said that. In the apartments, you'll also find these cockroaches. These, as far as I know, don't relate to James in any way and are more so a nod to the original Silent Hill, as a manifestation of Alessa Gillespie's fear and hatred of bugs. In this hallway, James tries to reach for a key through these metal bars.
Hey! Wait! Damn it.
Soon after, we get an incredibly iconic scene. A man lays dead in front of a TV. If you look closer, you'll notice James's jacket, jeans, and boots. Yet another body that resembles James. This scene, I believe, serves as ominous foreshadowing for the breakdown of James's most deeply repressed memory, and the initial source of all his guilt. Moving on though, we enter a room and hear someone puking in the bathroom. A dead body is left on the open fridge. And the puking sounds come from the next character we'll meet, Eddie.
Hey, Who's there?
It wasn't me. I didn't do it. I didn't do it, I swear.
Hey, are you okay?
I didn't do anything. He was like that when I got here.
He... Oh, you mean the man back there? In the kitchen?
I didn't do it. I swear I didn't kill him.
Yeah, it's all right. I'm not saying that you did. Look, my name is James. James Sunderland.
Eddie.
Eddie, okay. So, do you live here, Eddie?
No. I'm not even from this town. It's just...
Something brought you here.
Yeah. Yeah, you could say that. Well, they came at me. I didn't know what to do, so I ran. I came here. Figured it might be safe, but then I found the guy in the fridge.
Easy, deep breaths.
It's not exactly clear what Eddie is doing here, just that they, whoever they are, came at him, so he ran away and ended up here. Perhaps you found Eddie's introduction somewhat humorous. The loud puking kind of clashes with the atmosphere this game has been building up so far. This might very well be intentional, as Eddie's character is framed by two primary themes: violence and deep insecurity. From the very beginning, these themes are visually reinforced. Throughout the cutscene, James is quite literally looking down on Eddie, symbolizing Eddie's own perception of himself as inferior in some way. I think we should also note that he is puking after seeing this dead body, after witnessing this act of violence, which he desperately tries to convince James he had nothing to do with. Like I said, violence is one of the most constant themes in Eddie's character, but here the act of puking can be seen as a reaction to those ideas. He, like James, is most likely rejecting parts of himself in order to protect his consciousness. Looking at this through a Freudian lens, Eddie puking could be seen as an attempt to expel this part of himself, an attempt at purging that which his consciousness cannot bear.
Look, this place, it's not safe. These things, this whole town, there's something wrong with it. Might be best if you just get out of here.
Yeah, you're right. Hey, you want to come with? Maybe together we can find a way out of this town.
Oh, sorry, but I can't leave. Not yet. I need to find someone.
Oh.
And Eddie, be careful.
Yeah, you too.
Eddie looks fairly similar from the original, and the slight changes that are there are an overall improvement, I think. All except those Hyperborean A10 eyes. But seriously, why are his eyes so obnoxiously blue? But anyway, we go to this apartment, and when entering the bedroom, we hear a woman gasping, maybe? This noise plays at random parts of the game, or at least I think they're random. But we again get this breathing, or perhaps more accurately, difficulty breathing motif. I again can't speak too much on this yet, but I still think it's important for you to remember this. But it's in this apartment where we get arguably the most iconic cutscene of this entire game. It happens right after James examines this bloody handkerchief, something I believe reminds him of Mary, or could have very well belonged to her. Before we start dissecting this scene, I have to say that this entire cutscene was amazingly done. From the reveal of Pyramid Head killing the mannequins, to his erratic, glitchy movements and the building up of tension as he approaches. It was all perfect. Another masterclass by Vince Gilligan. I assume he was involved somehow. I think an interesting way of viewing Pyramid Head is as James's Freudian superego. But first, you must understand, at least very basically, Freud's idea of the id and the superego. The id is essentially the primal, instinctual, to some extent infantile, part of the psyche, which seeks pleasure, comfort, and the avoidance of all pains. It operates through the pleasure principle, seeking immediate gratification of your base desires, and according to Freud, is the base state of all humans. So babies are essentially entirely controlled by their id. It does make some sense intuitively. And then you have the superego, which represents that internal voice of societal rules, ethics, and just general societal expectations of pro-social behavior. It essentially acts as a moral compass, continually in conflict with the id's pleasure-seeking, pain-avoiding behavior. And it's the battle, quote-unquote, between the id and the superego which forms an individual's active, conscious ego. And so you could say Pyramid Head throughout the game functions as a manifestation of James's repressed superego, representing his guilt and, more importantly, his desire to be punished for all that he's done. Now, let's talk about James hiding away in this closet. Besides being possibly a reference to Blue Velvet, it hints at a form of voyeurism, which I believe Freud would likely view as a symptom of repressed desires. Here, he's a voyeur to Pyramid Head, his superego, enacting violence onto these mannequins. And since the mannequins are one of the most overt displays of pleasure and desire, his superego is enacting violence on his id. Pyramid Head, of course, knows exactly where James is hiding. After all, there is no hiding from your own subconscious. James fires his gun at Pyramid Head, but the act is ultimately impotent. Then Pyramid Head leaves. He's not retreating, however, he simply leaves. If we continue to interpret him as the embodiment of James's superego, Pyramid Head's purpose is not to kill James, but to torment him and confront him with his repressed guilt, to take him out of the pleasure principle and bring him into the reality principle. We then cross into the other apartment complex to see the exact mirror copy of the room we were just in, except the closet where James was hiding has been slashed by Pyramid Head's giant knife. If we view the closet as a representation of James's repression, its destruction would represent Pyramid Head's ability to break down said repression. I don't remember this detail being in the original, so I thought this was a great little added detail by Bloober Team. After crossing this gap, we are now in the Otherworld. To be honest, I'm not totally a fan. Don't get me wrong, it looks absolutely amazing. The signature rusty, decayed aesthetic is portrayed beautifully. You can really see it shine particularly in the Brookhaven Hospital, but it just doesn't feel like the right fit for James's story. We are essentially experiencing Alessa's Otherworld from Silent Hill 1, or Heather's from Silent Hill 3. Heather experiences it because she essentially is Alessa, a sort of reincarnation of her. The bloody, rotting, and aggressive design makes perfect sense for Alessa's particular trauma, which is mostly rooted in aggressive physical abuse under the hands of Silent Hill's cult. However, I just don't think it aligns as naturally with James's more introspective, guilt-driven journey. James's experience is not about overwhelming violence or visceral suffering. It's about a slow, psychological creeping despair, which perfectly mimics the feeling of watching the love of his life slowly wither away. The original Silent Hill 2 Otherworld was thematically fitting as a cold, sterile, hospital-like environment, using these colder tones, amplifying the oppressive memories of Mary's illness. I feel as if Bloober Team went with this direction due to Alessa's Otherworld being so iconic, which it definitely is and was beautifully executed here. But in a way, they ended up falling into the same trap a lot of the Western devs who worked past Silent Hill 4 did, of putting things in simply for the sake of, brand recognition. I'm not gonna harp on it too much, it does look very good, but it is a little disappointing, especially since it does keep some elements of James's original Otherworld, like these plastic sheets covering the environment, hammering home the sense of sterile lifelessness. But whatever, we cringe on. At least in the remake, James doesn't just shove his arm into a random toilet. After progressing through the apartments a fair bit, we meet Angela in an empty room, one of its walls covered by a giant mirror. I believe this mirror is meant to represent Angela's deeply fractured self-perception due to her trauma, which we'll of course see more of as her story progresses. But it might also represent a symbolic contrast between her and James, who are, in many ways, polar opposites.
Oh. It's you.
Yeah. I'm James.
Angela.
Angela. Okay. Look, I'm not sure what you're planning, but there's always another way.
Really? What's the point? It's easier just to run. Maybe it's all we deserve.
We?
Me. You. We're all the same.
I'm not like you.
Are you afraid? Sorry.
It's okay.
Angela is holding a knife with some visible bloodstains, suggesting that she may have used it to harm herself. I don't think it's ever been explicitly confirmed that Angela self-harms, but I do think it's possible given her extreme trauma. James says, "I'm not like you." What I think he means is that, unlike Angela, James would never hurt himself. But on a deeper level, it might reflect the fundamental difference in how these two process guilt and blame. Angela seems to deeply internalize her suffering, blaming herself exclusively for everything that has happened to her, and consciously punishing herself in the process, while James buries and represses. Angela is entirely consumed by her superego, causing her to be the hyper-neurotic person that she is, while James is more so consumed by his id, which would allow him to keep his more stoical, more detached persona.
Did you find your mother?
No. Not yet.
Did she live here? In this building?
I don't know.
So all you know is that she lived in this town?
What did you say? How did you know that?
Well, I just figured because this is where you're looking for her. How else would I know?
Yeah. Sorry. Did you find the person that you were looking for?
Not yet. Her name's Mary. She's my wife.
I'm sorry.
Oh, it's okay. I don't know why I think she's here. She died 3 years ago.
She's dead?
Oh, don't worry, I'm not crazy. At least I don't think so.
We have to find my mama.
Should I go with you? This town really is dangerous. Now I know what you meant back there in the cemetery.
No, it's okay. Besides, I'd just slow you down.
What about that?
Will you hold it for me?
Sure, no problem.
If I kept it, I'm not sure what I might do. No! I'm sorry! I've been bad! Please don't!
Angela becomes hyper-defensive when James approaches to take the knife, reacting as if, for a moment, she perceives him as someone else entirely. This reaction is a bit shocking, especially since James has been consistently cordial and even gentle towards her. James has shown zero signs of any hostility. In fact, I think he seems to recognize Angela's overall nervousness and fragility and seems to make an effort to approach her with some sensitivity. However, this of course ties back to her trauma, and Angela is most likely projecting a figure of her past onto James. Throughout the game, you'll find little pieces of sheep music sometimes. After this Angela cutscene, we find vers la flamme, I don't know how to speak French, which means towards the flame, I think. This is most likely a piece of foreshadowing for the end of our story. To get an important item, we have to go into this moth room. We get it from another little Freudian hole, and only those with Freudian riz may enter the Freudian hole. Moths are a consistent symbol in the game, alongside butterflies. Moths, I believe, are meant to represent death and decay, and are strongly associated with Mary. Butterflies, I believe, are meant to represent life, rebirth, and are associated with another character we'll meet somewhat soon. But right now, we have the game's first boss fight. This boss fight is significantly better than it was in the original. Pyramid Head in the remake has such a strong presence. Even though he appears slow at first, the more you shoot him, the faster and more aggressive he becomes. I also like that they abandoned this strange, tiny room where this fight originally took place. I mean, it probably wouldn't work with the remake's new over-the-shoulder camera angle anyway, but still, I always thought that was a very awkward place to put a boss fight in. But of course, they still kept that room in as a little nod to the original. Now, the fight happens in the Otherworld apartment courtyard, which is now filled with rusty cages. These cages fit perfectly with Pyramid Head's theme, as a judge and punisher, and I think also show the futility of fighting Pyramid Head. So let's get into that. Eventually, Pyramid Head will simply leave. Just like in the original, this fight operates on an invisible timer. But why? Why can't James kill Pyramid Head? If we continue with my stupid Freudian analysis, it makes perfect sense. The superego cannot be fought or killed. It is an intrinsic part of James's psyche, in this case embodying his repressed guilt and his desire to be punished. Pyramid Head serves a clear function, and that is to lead James out of his fractured, repressed state, to push James into the reality principle, to make James confront the truth and eventually accept it. And I think it's also very fitting that he gets faster and stronger the more you attack him. Fighting the superego will only validate its necessity even more. Now outside, we meet with a little girl that stepped on James's hand.
Hey, it was you, wasn't it? You're the one who stepped on my hand.
Maybe I did.
What's a little girl like you doing here anyway?
I don't know. What's a big dum-dum like you doing here anyway?
Hey, that's not very nice. Didn't your parents teach you any manners? What you got there?
None of your business. You didn't love Mary anyway.
What? Hey, wait! How do you know her name?
This is Laura, and she seems to navigate the town without any fear. This is most likely because, with her being so young, she carries no repressed guilt, trauma, or anything of the sort for Silent Hill to manifest into some monstrous figure. Unlike James, Angela, and Eddie, who are haunted by their inner demons and past actions and repression of said actions, Laura's innocence makes her sort of immune to the town's psychological torment. For her, I imagine Silent Hill is just an empty, strange place. We finally arrive at Rosewater Park, where James believes he and Mary's special place might be.
Mary? No. You're not.
Do I look like your girlfriend?
No, my late wife. I can't believe it. Your face, your voice, you could be...
My name is Maria. I don't look like a ghost, do I? See? Warm.
Sorry, I got confused.
We meet Maria, the character associated with the butterfly, shown in her butterfly tattoo on her chest. Maria looks almost identical to Mary, except her hair and clothing. Her personality and circumstance are also strikingly different. Where Mary was restrained and dependent during her illness, Maria seems to exude confidence, health, and sensuality. From a Freudian perspective, Maria could be seen as a manifestation of James's id, as a projection of his wife, but idealized through his desire-driven psyche. She embodies vitality, carefree sensuality, which is a massive contrast with the image of the fragile, bedridden Mary.
Hey. Where are you going?
I need to find Mary.
Didn't you say she died?
Oh? Yeah. 3 years ago. It's just... I got a letter from her.
A letter?
I know how it sounds. I don't...
Hey. It's okay. So, what did the letter say?
She said she was waiting for me. In our special place.
And that's here? Anyway, I haven't seen her. Is this your only special place?
I don't know anymore. There was something. I can't quite...
Hey! I think I might know. I mean, there's this one place. Not far from here.
What kind of place?
The kind two lovers might call special. I can show you if you want. Unless you have somewhere else to be. Something else to do. Hey, easy there. I'm just messing with you. Come on. It's this way.
You're coming with me? Can't you just tell me where it is?
Wait. You're just gonna leave me here? Alone? With all these monsters around?
No, I just...
Generally, Maria is playful, flirtatious, and seemingly unaffected by Silent Hill's horrors. She's almost a form of escapism. Yet at other times, which you will see more of later, she becomes extremely needy and dependent, desperate for James's full attention and his comfort, possibly mirroring Mary's dependency in her final days. So at certain points, this idealized projection of Maria will start falling apart as James gets closer to the truth.
Is it because I remind you of her? You loved her, didn't you? didn't you?
All right, just... Come on.
So it's okay.
Yeah.
Maria's look has changed the most out of any character in the remake. I'm not entirely sure why they ditched her Christina Aguilera early 2000s look. I always thought it was pretty iconic. That said, I did hear, and take this with a grain of salt, that Bloober Team thought the old look would date the game too much, so they went for something that felt more modern, still kind of timeless. Honestly, I think her new look is quite good. Her new outfit still does a great job at contrasting with Mary's very proper, almost archetypally pure look. On our way, we stopped by the motel where Heather came with Douglas.
You ever stayed in a place like this? The walls are so thin, you can hear everything. Love, hate, jealousy.
And when we go to the room she stayed at, we find some references to Silent Hill 3. Douglas's fedora.
Fedoras are awesome. Mine's better.
And when you come back here in a later point of the game, behind this wallpaper, the halo of the sun. I'll be honest, I don't really want a Silent Hill 3 remake. I think out of all the games, Silent Hill 3 is the one that needs a remake the least. Not because I don't like the game, the opposite. The voice acting is great, and in my opinion, it's one of the most beautiful looking games in the PS2. In one of the apartments, they also give a nod to Maria's original outfit.
Hey, you think I'd look good in this one?
Sure.
James and Maria eventually get overwhelmed by some lying figures. James uses the wooden plank to close the gate, and we get our new weapon, the metal pipe. After going through various back streets and backyards, we reach the back of Heaven's Night. After passing by the back rooms of Heaven's Night, we see Maria.
Maria?
What? Oh, come on, don't give me that look. I was just kidding.
What is this? Is this a special place you met?
Don't be silly. Just have to go through and out the front. Then again, now that we're here, can't we stay? Just for a little while. Catch our breath before we head back out there.
I don't have time to take a break. Mary could be out there, waiting for me.
I know. It's just... this place, this whole thing, it's like a nightmare. I just wanted to get away from it, even for a second. I'm sorry.
No, it's fine. Sorry, I didn't mean to.
We see more clearly here how Maria goes from being confident and playful to completely vulnerable. We could view this as a visualization of James's inner turmoil between his Freudian id and superego. The id being the confident, pleasurable Maria, which can perfectly take care of herself, and therefore James doesn't need to take care of her. With this Maria, James has no responsibility. And then the superego, the Maria which is sensitive, which needs to be comforted and reassured and taken care of. Similarly to his wife when she was sick.
I guess this place is getting to me, too. Am I crazy? You know, for thinking she could be here.
Crazy is one word for it, I guess. I can think of another.
And what's that?
Hopeful.
Well, that's a nicer way of putting it.
Here.
What are you doing?
Something to take the edge off. No? You sure? Fine. Be that way. Here's to hope, undying.
Maria makes a toast to hope undying, a line that I think really cements her as a form of escapism for James, as a sort of fantasy. When Maria embodies the id, carefree, confident, seductive, she tells James what he wants to hear, that it isn't crazy for him to search for his dead wife in this abandoned town. She offers him an escape from the painful truth he's repressing.
We should probably get going.
Fine.
When Maria hands James the drink, he gets nervous. He hesitates as he looks at it. I think this not only reinforces Maria as a figure of escapism and temptation, but might also harken back to James's history with alcohol that we talked about in the start of the video. This cutscene as a whole was absolutely amazing, and really shows that the developers understood Silent Hill 2. So great job to Bloober Team, Vince, Scorsese. When we explore Heaven's Night, we can look in the Lost and Found and find a wedding ring, and James has a missing ring on his ring finger. Is Bloober Team saying that James frequented strip clubs while Mary was sick? Or worse, that he was perhaps unfaithful? People have theorized about this before, but there was never any concrete evidence of it, so maybe now that theory might have some validity to it. I personally don't believe it. I just don't think being unfaithful to Mary would actually fit well with James's overall character, but that's just me. But we cringe on and reach the so-called special place Maria was talking about. And I know I was just singing the praises of Bloober Team and Tarantino and everyone else, but they actually forgot to put a chain on this gate. See, Maria goes under James's arm. That makes sense. And then James goes under nothing. Shit game, refund it. No chain on the thing.
That's it? A garden?
There's a bit more to it than that.
If you say so.
Maria brings James to a statue of a woman who was sent to die alone in an island. But a man fell madly in love with her, and every night would rode to her as she held out a candle to guide his way.
But this one night, a terrible storm broke out. Caught him out in the open, and it blew out the candle. Even in darkness, the man would not give up. He would not turn back. So he fought against the raging waters until finally the lake took him. They say even then, the woman never lost hope. She kept coming out at night, kept lighting the candle to bring her beloved home, to lead him to shore. Not sure how much truth there is to it. It's probably just a fairy tale. But she's become something of a local saint. patron of undying love. Hence this place.
She's not here.
What?
She's not here. And why would she be? I don't even remember this place.
James is visibly upset. Of course, because it isn't the special place where Mary is waiting for him. But I think he's also upset by the actual content of the story, since this woman somewhat resembles Mary when she was sick and isolated. Perhaps this story reminds James of his failure to fulfill the same role as the lover in the story. Instead of consistently rowing to her, James abandoned Mary.
It's okay. There's plenty of other places to look. We can still...
Come on.
James and Maria follow the screams, which lead them into the back of the theater. Maria doesn't enter because she's not much of a movie fan, whatever that means.
Okay. Not much of a movie fan anyway. And James?
Yeah.
Be careful in there.
Yeah.
This is boring.
You didn't see me a minute ago. Screamed your head out, didn't you? You should have seen your face.
I told you. It was this big rat. It jumped right at me from under the seat. You would have screamed too if you saw it. Got this fatso.
Hey, well, what do you have to say that for?
Anyway, why are you saying...
Just before I cut off their conversation like an idiot, Laura was about to say that the cops are looking for Eddie, so I guess we now know why he ended up in Silent Hill, although we don't know why the police could be looking for him. After finding a way into the room Eddie's in, we get the cutscene which replaces the Pete's Bolorama scene, and it's now much more intense.
Eddie?
Oh. You're,
James. We met back at the apartment building.
Yeah, I remember.
I see that you didn't make it out yet.
Yeah. I just didn't get around to it yet.
At least you got your appetite back.
I think it's sort of clear that we are meant to judge Eddie, as James sort of does as well. The way he binges on food and slovenly eats is a little jarring. If we were to interpret Eddie's binge eating through a Freudian lens, for some reason, it could reflect a regression to what Freud would call the oral stage of development, the most infantile stage, where comfort is only really found through things like sucking and biting, which is of course what babies do when feeding. Freud would argue that if this stage remains unresolved, an adult could develop a sort of reliance on oral activities, such as overeating, as a way to seek comfort or cope with stress, almost a pseudo form of regression, if you will. For Eddie, however, it might go beyond just comfort. His reliance on food very likely would serve as a way to feel some semblance of control over his life, a life where for most of it he felt powerless. Smoking is apparently another possibility, but you know, as a smoker, hey, sometimes a Newport is just a Newport, you know what I'm saying?
Are you alone here, Eddie?
No.
Well,
That's probably just Laura messing around.
the little girl? Laura, is that her name?
That's what she said.
I'm gonna go look for her. You coming?
Now you want me to come with you?
Never mind.
But this sense of powerlessness in Eddie's life might then translate into his extreme sensitivity to rejection. As you saw, Eddie remembers that James refused to pair up with him in the apartment. even though James had a perfectly reasonable excuse not to, and he seems to have deeply internalized that. We chase after Laura and end up outside where Maria was also chasing after her, and she leads us into the next stage of this game, the Brookhaven Hospital. You might have noticed that the weather outside has changed. The grey, cold, foggy outside seems to have turned to a warm, nostalgic sunset orange. This one's going to be a bit of a stretch, so you've been warned. Could the sunset represent a coming revelation? A quiet respite calling for the darkness, where James's repression lies. We could view the coming darkness as the emergence of his jungian shadow. The jungian shadow, very basically, being the unconscious aspects of the self that an individual might repress or deny the existence of. And it would make sense for this stage in particular. After all, it was most likely in a hospital where Mary suffered the most. So it's the perfect setting for James to confront some of the most offensive material that his mind has buried. All of that cacophony of emotions, the pain of seeing Mary suffering and bedridden, the resentment of her being so dependent, the longing to be more intimate, physically, emotionally, all of it. After getting the generator started and going to the second floor, it not only gets dark, but it also begins to rain. If we keep on with this Jungian symbolism, in Jungian dream interpretation, water can be seen as a symbol of the unconscious, but more specifically, as an invitation for one to dig deeper into one's unconscious. And James most definitely gets an opportunity to dig deeper, as Maria starts to feel sick and they have a conversation which no doubt would remind him of the beginning of Mary's descent.
Maria? Hey. You okay?
I'm sorry.
That's fine. What's going on? Are you sure?
It's nothing. Probably just a hangover.
Maybe you should rest.
Yeah. Okay. So comfy.
I'm gonna go look for Laura. I'll be back as soon as I can.
James? I wanted to ask you. What if you can't find Mary? What will you do?
I haven't really thought about that.
Get back soon, okay?
I really love this detail they put in. During cutscenes, keep track of James's eyes. Whenever he's confronted by something symbolically important, he begins to detach from the situation, and his eyes start darting around the room, as if his subconscious is looking for some form of distraction, something to comfort him. After this, we are introduced to the most iconic enemy of the Silent Hill series, the Bubblehead Nurses, or as they are more commonly known, the Sexy Nurses. And they are a manifestation of Masahiro Ito's fetish. Popular theory surrounding the nurses is that they represent James's sexual frustration during Mary's hospitalization. I also very much used to subscribe to this theory, and I do think there's some validity to it. However, after reading some more, I've come to a different conclusion that you might find interesting. Takeyoshi Sato once said this about the insidiously erotic scene of Pyramid Head killing the mannequins. And keep in mind that Takeyoshi Sato's first language is not English, so I'll try to make the quote sound a bit more natural, while of course keeping the original meaning. He says, "Psychological horror has to shake a human's heart deeply. Shaking people's heart deeply means uncovering people's core emotions and their core motivation for life. Everybody is thinking and concerned about sex and death. If we want to scare, shake, or touch the users or spectators, then we have to think about sex and death deeply. To make a death scene, somebody died or a monster died, we try to mix an erotic essence. I found this really interesting, because this aligns quite perfectly with Freud's proposed fundamental human drives. The eros, or the sex drive, associated with procreation and survival, and the thanatos, or the death drive, associated with aggression, destruction, and like we mentioned before, the desire to return to a state of non-existence, of death. Freud was quite the philosophical pessimist, if you haven't noticed. I actually made a video about pessimism and True Detective, so if you're interested, go check that out. And I think this is what the nurse's most noticeable features are meant to represent. Their twisted, hypersexualized appearance and violent, hostile behavior can be seen as a direct manifestation of these two fundamental drives, eros and thanatos, and it of course makes for a great horror experience. Their heads are a different story, however. Their head, or bandage mask, is, according to the Silent Hill wiki, filled with liquid, possibly blood, and they erratically, violently shake their head to attempt to breathe. So we again get that breathing or difficulty breathing motif that we've talked about earlier. Their mouth is covered by a red square, similar to the save points in the game, but we'll talk about what the red squares represent as a whole much later in the video. The hospital level is very good, and although it's very big, you can very easily map it out in your head. All the puzzles are quite good as well. One complaint though, I don't like that they changed the bent hook with the hair to fish out the key puzzle to make it much more sensible. Now it's a bent syringe and some medical tubing, which makes a lot of sense and is congruent with the theme of the level. I liked it better when it was fucked and you had to combine like some hair and a Lego piece and a used condom or whatever. But our quest to find and talk to Laura continues.
Hey, are you okay?
Go away!
Don't be afraid, I just want to talk.
While on the roof, we Again, Pyramid Head does not kill James. In fact, he sort of helps him, as there was no way for us to get to where Pyramid Head threw us. Again, if we continue to view this through a Freudian lens, then Pyramid Head, serving as his repressed superego, is aiding James in his journey of self-realization. But it's in this area where James finally gets to speak to Laura and maybe get some answers.
Laura?
How do you know my name?
Eddie told me.
That big, fat blabbermouth.
Laura, why do you keep running away from me? And how do you know about Mary?
I just do. What's the big deal?
Why can't you just tell me?
You gonna yell at me if I don't?
No. I won't, please, just... I need to know.
Mary's my friend. We met at the hospital last year.
Stop lying! Laura, I'm sorry.
Fine, don't believe me. See if I care!
Hey!
Let go!
Sorry, Laura, but I can't let you just run around this place. You might get hurt.
Hurt by what?
Look, just stay with me, okay? This is no place for a kid.
Fine. But... there's something I gotta get.
Laura,
It's important.
what is it?
A letter. For Mary.
What?
I hid it. In there.
You sure this is where you left it?
It's in the back. Behind an old pipe.
Okay, wait here. Laura?
Haha! a liar, right? Want me to open it? Huh? Do ya?
Laura, open this door right now.
What's the magic word?
Laura!
Nope, that's not it. I guess I won't open it.
Get me out of here, you brat!
In your dreams, fart face.
Please open the door. There's something in here.
Sure there is. A big lying fart face. See ya, fart face!
Laura! Laura!
Fartface now has to fight the next boss of the game, Fleshlip, a grotesque amalgamation of flesh within, I believe, some sort of burlap sack, then encased in a rusty bed frame. Not laying on a bed, but directly immersed within it, symbolizing Mary's lengthy hospitalization and obviously her confinement to her bed. And the lips at the bottom are most likely meant to symbolize the painful, cutting words she directed at James. Words shaped by her frustration, fear, and anger as she faced her unknown terminal illness. And this might be demonstrated through Fleshlip's screams, which stunned James. I believe this boss as a whole is meant to reflect both James's guilt over his resentment of Mary's dependence and the psychological scars left by those moments of deep emotional pain. At first I was worried they kept the boss basically the same. I never particularly liked this boss. I always thought it was very simple and easy, but they made it so the bed frame turns into sort of spider legs. This new addition is genuinely terrifying and made a, in my opinion, fairly forgettable boss into an incredibly scary and memorable one.
James.
The old box with the multiple locks makes an appearance here in the remake as well, and I've always thought maybe it could symbolize James's multiple layers of disassociation and repression to shield himself from what he's done. But I've also heard that the 3 locks are meant to represent the 3 years James was forced to care for Mary, but I'm not entirely sure if that's been confirmed by anyone from Team Silent, so it might just be a personal theory that got popular. And this actually leads me to talking about personal theories about the game, or other games or media in general. I've noticed some people get very upset when others share interpretations or theories that haven't been explicitly confirmed by Team Silent, especially if a member of All Team Silent provides information that contradicts those theories. Personally, I've always felt that this kind of discussion is what keeps games like these alive. The ambiguity and particular elements of a story can often breed a deeper engagement and cause people to want to dig deeper. And I just think it's what makes media like this so fascinating. I don't know, sometimes it just feels like people want to flex their knowledge by positioning themselves as the arbiters of what constitutes a correct type of theory, which I think in the end can sort of stifle the conversation entirely. When you get all the codes and eventually open the box, it's empty. In the original, it seems empty, but James finds a strain of hair which he uses to fish out that key. Perhaps it being empty could symbolize the overall futility of James's search for Mary. Or perhaps it could symbolize the fact that James has not yet accepted the truth, so the box has nothing to offer him. We then see the Lady of the Door, and next to her, a little passage. It reads, "She's an angel no one knows, only I can see the Lady of the Door. They cannot walk along a bridge of thread, they fall from the weight of their crimes. Bloated and ugly corpses. Their sins, she devours them. Sin and sinner alike. She saves me, she is an angel." I believe the Lady of the Door is meant to symbolize Mary, or at least an idealized version of her, as pure, forgiving, and angelic. This could represent James's superego, elevating Mary to an almost ethereal status as a way to force him to confront his guilt. But it might just be that James views Mary as the only way to be forgiven, or as the only person who has the right to forgive him, as he most certainly hasn't been able to forgive himself. We then place the button on the elevator to get to the basement and hear an announcer.
Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in. Welcome to another exciting edition of Trick or Treat.
The announcer voice is meant to represent me, high on Fent, killing you, the viewer. Okay, maybe he tongle gongle single songle blah, blah, blah. I have no clue why this was here in the original or why it's here in the remake. I don't really think it's meant to represent anything, besides my love for Fent. In the basement, we meet up with Maria.
James!
Mary! Oh. Maria, I thought... Sorry. Anyway, I'm glad you're alive.
Anyway? What do you mean, anyway? I was almost killed back there. I have never been so scared in my whole life. All you care about is that dead wife of yours. You couldn't care less about me, could you?
No, I just...
Then stay with me. Don't leave me alone again. You're supposed to take care of me.
She has quite the rapid change in emotion. One moment she's berating James, the other clinging onto him, telling him he's supposed to take care of her. You probably know what I'm gonna say, but this is very similar to the way Mary acted while she was ill, which of course you'll see evidence of much later.
So what about Laura? You found her?
Yeah, but she ran away.
What? We have to find her.
Yeah, you really seem to care about that girl. Do you know her?
I'd never met her before. I just feel sorry for her. She's all alone and... I don't know, for some reason I feel like it's up to me to protect her.
James notices Maria's deep concern for Laura, and even Maria herself seems somewhat taken aback by it. This poses an interesting question. Mary did have a close relationship with Laura, but James doesn't really know that yet. Most of what we see in the game is usually filtered through James's perception and personal knowledge. Yet with Maria, it feels as though parts of her genuinely are Mary, as if she has access to memories and emotions that only Mary could possess.
What the hell is that?
Well, what do you know? A stroll in the rain.
Maria, what are you talking about?
I'm trying to keep things light, James. Just humor me, okay?
While James struggles to open this cooler refrigerator thing, Maria is back to her confident, playful self, as if nothing ever happened.
Having trouble there?
Yeah. You think you could give me a hand?
Me? You're supposed to be the big man around here. How's a little girl like me supposed to help? Fine.
She lifts it up with ease, symbolizing that she is the pound-for-pound greatest fighter in UFC history, and not John Jones. When we go back and finally open the Lady of the Door, Maria is very nervous about going in.
What's wrong? I thought you wanted to get out of here.
I know. It's just... something doesn't feel right.
It's as if she knows exactly what's going to happen beyond that door. This hints that Maria is intrinsically connected to this town and to James's story. I think it's also symbolically important that James holds her hand and essentially leads her into what is about to happen. Maria's death is a pivotal moment in James's confrontation with his superego. Maria, an idealized projection, represents what James wishes he could have, a version of Mary who isn't burdened by illness or pain. Her loss forces James to confront the reality he has been avoiding, Mary's true suffering, and more importantly, his role in her death, represented by James leading Maria into the hallway and his inability to hold the elevator door open for her. James sees Laura running outside and again chases after her. Outside now, we get a look at an enemy that was somewhat overlooked in the original, but is thankfully a little more utilized in the remake. The Mandarin. It gets his name from the Chinese character Guan, which is interesting. We see again this mouth motif that we saw in the boss Fleshlip, representing the verbal abuse endured by James from Mary. If this monster looks familiar to you, it's because it was later reworked to be the closer in Silent Hill 3, which I believe is one of the most iconic enemies of that game. Inside of a trailer, we find a passage written on a map. It reads, "He who is not bold enough to be stared at from across the abyss is not bold enough to stare into it himself. The truth can only be learned by marching forward." We could interpret this as a reference to Nietzsche's famous quote, which in some translations reads, "Whoever fights monsters should see to it that in the process, he does not become a monster, and if you gaze long enough into the abyss will gaze back into you." Throughout the game, James is battling physical monsters, but as we've discussed, these creatures carry with them a symbolic meaning. They are manifestations of James's own psyche and are, to some extent, a part of him. Maybe the very act of fighting them shows James's desire to protect himself, not just physically, but psychologically as well. He is resisting the truth about himself, clinging to denial as a defense mechanism. If James were to somehow succeed in this denial, in this repression, he himself would be the monster. But that's not what he must do. He must stare into the abyss, into his jungian shadow, let's say, and be bold enough to allow it to stare back at him. But by this point, James is still very much able to not be a monster, as his subconscious will still tell him things like, "If you really want to see Mary, you should just die, but you might be heading to a different place than Mary, James." There is still some self-awareness within James, even if it's very much informed by guilt and, of course, self-hatred. Eventually, in this park, we meet up with Angela.
Hey. Are you feeling better?
This place is different from what I remember. I guess things never really stay the same, do they?
I guess not.
I don't think she's here anymore, James.
Who?
My mama. She doesn't want to see me anymore.
Why would you think that? Anyway, I'm happy to see you.
Happy to see me?
Alive, I mean.
Oh. Yeah. I better get going.
You still don't want me to go with you? If we stick together, we might just make it out of here.
Out of where?
This town. Silent Hill.
No, it's fine.
You didn't happen to see the little girl around here, did you?
A little girl?
Yeah, Angela? Are you all right? Angela?
No. Please. You shouldn't be here.
Angela, it's okay.
No, don't talk to me!
This scene is new and really shows her general hypersensitivity. Everything James says seems to immediately put her on edge, as if she's always suspicious of his true intentions. It is a bit strange though that James asks Angela if she wants to pair up to escape Silent Hill, since James at this point is still dedicated to finding Mary. There's been no indication that he's given up on that goal. But this scene is more about Angela, so let's focus on her. We find Angela vacantly staring at a statue of a praying woman. Perhaps we can interpret this as a representation of a motherly figure, or in Jungian terms, the general mother archetype. Angela came to Silent Hill searching for her mother, and this statue might reflect her longing for that figure of comfort. Hell, for all we know, Angela might be physically seeing her mother in that statue, since we've established already that different characters view the town differently. She does mention that Silent Hill is different from how she remembers it, and reveals that she thinks her mother doesn't want to see her anymore. And I personally don't see any feelings of resentment towards her mother, but more so a real sadness and sense of abandonment. It implies that Angela's mother may not have been a consistent source of protection or reassurance in her life, and might very well have resented Angela. Interestingly, mentioning Laura, the little girl, provokes quite a reaction from her, and might have been the catalyst for the hallucination that she sees at the end there. Children, or more specifically the innocence they subconsciously symbolize, might cause Angela great discomfort, most likely due to Angela's own unjust loss of innocence. From everything we've seen from Angela, you can probably guess the nature of her trauma, but I'll talk about it when I feel it's more appropriate to do so, especially since in the next cutscene we have with her, we will find out what she saw in the bushes that made her run away. Our goal right now is to go to the Silent Hill Historical Society, and on the way we get to soak in the atmosphere. We also get to explore the most important location, that being Pete's Bolorama, where in the original, James and Eddie had that conversation which in the remake takes place in the theater.
Ugh. This town's full of monsters. Who could just sit here and eat pizza?
Arriving at the Silent Hill Historical Society, we find a large painting called Misty Day, Remains of Judgment, where it seems to depict Pyramid Head as a sort of judge of the souls behind him. According to the Silent Hill wiki, on a previous trip to Silent Hill, James and Mary visited the Silent Hill Historical Society, where the painting supposedly left quite an impression on James. And this is the reason why I have not really commented on the appearance of Pyramid Head. The town, at least in Silent Hill 2, almost seems to operate on the surreal logic of a dream, where any elements which might be present in one's subconscious manifest in physical form. So Pyramid Head's appearance is simply a projection of this judge figure from this painting, etched deeply into James's psyche. And a judge fits perfectly as a manifestation of James's superego as well. After a long way down, James then has to plunge into what seems like a bottomless pit, something he will have to do more than once. These descents are most likely symbolic of the abyss we discussed earlier, or if you prefer Jungian terminology, the shadow. The shadow being the darker, hidden aspects of the self, traits, desires, or of course, memories that you might repress. The Jungian shadow is negatively built up through repression. It could contain something as banal as the guilty pleasure for K-dramas, or knowledge that you have hurt someone, are capable of hurting someone, or perhaps might even want to hurt someone. Jung once described the shadow as a deep well, and James is finally delving into that well. In this case, it leads into a labyrinthic prison, What better place to represent James's most repressed feelings and memories than a prison?
Ain't no big deal. Just put the gun to their head and pow.
Eddie?
Oh, hi, James.
What happened here? Who was that?
I don't know. It just came at me.
Okay. So he attacked you, and you shot him.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. He made me do it.
Okay, calm down, Eddie. Any idea why he would do that?
Well, I don't know. He came out of nowhere. Tried sneaking up on me in the dark. I heard footsteps, so I turned back and he was right there.
And you could tell that he wanted to hurt you.
Well, yeah, I mean, the way he looked at me, I just had to do it.
He looked at you? I thought you said he came at you.
Yeah, I mean, hey, I could see it in his eyes.
His eyes?
He kept looking at me, making fun of me. And I told him not to, but he didn't listen.
Eddie, you can't just kill someone because of the way they looked at you.
You should see your face, James. I was just joking. The guy was dead when I got here. I got you, didn't I? Well, anyway, I better get going.
Wait. You're gonna go out there alone?
Yeah.
We see here much more clearly Eddie's violent nature. We've seen before in the theater that he is incredibly sensitive to any perceived slight. Before, it was due to James refusing to pair up with him, and possibly his subconscious certainty that James was judging him for his eating habits, for example. Now, he seems to have killed someone, simply for the way they looked at him. Or perhaps he was truly joking. But from his mannerisms, if he was joking, it was most likely something he wished to do. There's a stark difference between James and Eddie in how they confront their jungian shadow. James's journey into the shadow, or as Jung would put it, his shadow work, which sounds fucking awesome, I know, results in individuation. Individuation, in Jungian terms, being the process of becoming whole by confronting and integrating your shadow in a healthy, pro-social manner. Eddie's shadow work seems to result in a form of what Jung would call shadow possession, which sounds fucking awesome, I know, where the individual becomes ruled by his shadow. So all that he was repressing, in his case, his capacity for violence, ends up defining him. After that cutscene, we are officially in the prison level. The prison is of course thematically fitting with James's unconscious desire for some form of punishment, and of course fits quite well with Pyramid Head acting as a form of judge or executioner. As a matter of fact, in the main puzzle of this area, we even see him depicted as an executioner in some sort of gallows. To be completely honest with you, the prison level is fucking annoying. It's a massive enemy dump, and I personally found it to be a slog to get through. Although, if we are looking at these monsters as manifestations of James's unconscious mind, or repressed shadow if you will, it would make sense that there will be a higher number of enemies here, seeing as we are much deeper within James's unconscious. And we do get sort of a new enemy here, as the leg mannequins now begin to act like spiders, scurrying around walls and jumping on you. In the gallows, James must choose a sinner to forgive, or that he believes to be justifiable in their actions. He is essentially performing Pyramid Head's role shown in the engravings. I think this really helps show how Pyramid Head and James are connected, how Pyramid Head is in fact a part of James, and that James must not only face the truth, but then judge himself. we reach a sort of morgue and jump down yet another chasm, and another, and then take a long elevator ride down, and finally reach the labyrinth. We find a newspaper detailing the death of a lumberjack named Thomas Oro something. The name seems to be covered by blood. He was stabbed multiple times in the neck and torso, implying that whoever did it was in an extreme frenzy and continued to stab the body well after he was dead. He had a history of drunkenness and violence, and whoever killed him was not after any valuables, as the cash in the room was untouched. Before entering this room, we hear Angela.
Daddy, please! No! Please. I'll be good, I promise. Tell him I'll be good, please.
Angela? Angela, it's me.
No. Please. Daddy!
We now see the next boss of the game, the Abstract Daddy. I'm sure by this point you can deduce what happened to Angela and what sort of things remain at the forefront of her subconscious at all times. The Abstract Daddy appears to be two humanoids within a bed frame, fully encased in human flesh. The bottom one possesses a mouth, which it uses to scream in pain or anger, or both. Its very design reeks of confinement and suffocation, and of course, violation. Judging by Angela's mannerisms, expressions, and overall fragile way of being, we can assume that the scene depicted in this monster was something that happened regularly in her life, and from an early enough age to permanently shape her identity today. Masahiro Ito has publicly stated that the Abstract Daddy's appearance is affected by James's own story and perception of Silent Hill. Although its contents pertain to Angela specifically, you can see how it resembles, for example, the flesh lip that James saw at the hospital. We will never know exactly what Angela sees the Abstract Daddy as, but I imagine it is much more direct, aggressive, and explicit, as it is shaped by her lived experiences. While running from the Abstract Daddy, we find Angela's little hiding place, where the game goes completely silent. This entire scenario, in fact, of running from the Abstract Daddy through the labyrinth, might represent Angela's attempt to escape her father in her childhood home. And later, we get a glimpse into Angela's version of the Otherworld. The walls are covered with grafted skin, hiding machinery and pistons working in a constant repetitive motion. The skin, I believe, is meant to represent extreme vulnerability, a sort of grotesque reminder of Angela's lack of ownership over her own body, leaving her skin stretched and displayed. The Freudian elements of the working machinery, pistons, holes, and pipes, I don't think need any further explanation. If we look back at the newspaper we found, I think it's safe to assume that Angela, last name Orozco, killed her father, Thomas Orozco. Is she a cold-blooded murderer? Or was she simply defending herself? This is most likely the psychological conflict that frames her entire trip through Silent Hill. After we kill the Abstract Daddy, Angela's seemingly unwarranted mistrust of James begins to make a lot more sense.
Okay, Angela. It's okay. Calm down.
Don't order me around!
I'm not, It's okay. It's over.
Don't even try.
Try what?
Like you don't know. I see what you're doing. It's always the same with you. You're only after one thing.
Angela, please.
You don't have to lie. Go ahead. Say it. Or you could just force me. Like he always did. You disgusting pig. I hate you. I hate you.
Angela, I don't know who you think I am, but I don't want to hurt you. I just want to get my Mary back.
You're Mary. Your own little Mary. At least she was. For a while.
What?
Admit it. You didn't want her around anymore.
No.
You probably found someone else.
No!
I need to find my mama.
Angela's accusation of infidelity is something James quickly and easily denies. The accusation of not wanting her around anymore, however, he has a little more trouble with. This particular line seems to deeply affect him. I believe he doesn't want to admit that that is something he might have thought. This is most likely what Freud would call resistance. In Freudian psychoanalysis, resistance refers to the unconscious defense mechanisms that a patient employs to avoid confronting repressed thoughts, memories, or desires that cause anxiety or distress. Freud had observed that during therapy, his patients would often resist discussing certain topics, forget important details, and sometimes become hostile. To Freud, these were all signs of the unconscious mind protecting itself from painful truths. James clearly does not want to admit that at some points, he truly did not want Mary around anymore.
I never.
Moving on though, make sure to remember this hallway, completely blocked by what looks like mannequins, but it could just be a general representation of enemies in this game. Going down these stairs, we meet with a character which we should not be able to meet again.
Maria? Maria! I thought that thing killed you. Are you hurt?
Not at all, silly.
But the thing... It stabbed you. There was blood everywhere.
Stabbed me? What do you mean?
It chased us to the elevator and then...
James, what are you talking about?
Just before. Don't you remember?
James? Honey? Did something happen to you? After we got separated in that long hallway? Are you confusing me with someone else? You were always so forgetful. Remember that time in the hotel?
Maria?
You said you took everything. But you forgot that videotape we made. I wonder if it's still there.
How do you know about that? Aren't you Maria?
I'm not your Mary.
So you are Maria.
I am. If you want me to be.
All I want from you is an answer.
Doesn't matter who I am. I am here for you, James. See? I'm real. Don't you want to touch me?
I don't know.
Well, if you happen to make up your mind, I'll be waiting.
I'll find some way to... I'll come back, I promise.
I believe this entire scene is meant to show James's inner conflict. Maria leaves him two options: find the videotape, face reality, confront your superego, or live in pleasurable fantasy, maintain your idealized Mary, maintain Maria. And she seems to entice him into the second option, appealing to James's more base instincts. I think this internal conflict is also shown in the overall set design of this scene, the prison bars acting as a barrier which he imposes on his subconscious. It is also unclear who is actually imprisoned here. Is it James, bound by his past, unable to move forward, continually searching for his deceased wife? Or Maria, a manifestation of his psyche, forever a projection of James's psychological repression? It also pairs quite well with James's overall psychological functions, where he is both the jailer and prisoner of his own psyche. Now you gotta fuck around with the cube, which will take you to different parts of the labyrinth. I really love this section. It has that elusive, liminal quality that's hard to put into words. There's something deeply unsettling about the way the bland, mundane apartment interior pairs with the insanely high ceilings. It creates this uncanny dissonance, and add to that the subconscious knowledge that we are who knows how many kilometers underground. It's a space that would only make sense within a dream. I guess that is fitting for an essentially symbolic journey through a man's mind. That same dream logic might explain why James finds this messy cubicle desk. This is most likely his place of work, as the back of the box on the original PS2 game states that he works as a clerk at a small company. After many more trials, the symbolism of which I won't go over as I would be repeating myself a little too much, we come to the other side of the bars where we talk to Maria.
Maria?
Note how this time, Maria doesn't die at the hands of Pyramid Head, but from an illness resembling Mary's. James then transitions from mourning Maria's death to a more focused and determined state, specifically fixating on Mary. This, I believe, marks a significant step in James's self-realization. I think he's beginning to disentangle the real Mary from the idealized Maria. Or perhaps, as James continues this journey through his psyche and shining a light on his repression, he's becoming more unable to manifest this idealized Maria. The important point here is that James seems to be breaking his pattern of avoidance, moving closer to confronting the painful truth. When we come outside, we see Pyramid Head's great knife.
What the hell?
James struggles to drag it along, and with it is able to cut through the mass of enemies which have largely represented his repressed state. By using Pyramid Head's knife, James could be symbolically bearing the responsibility of the superego, and so, through a lot of effort, is able to cut through the mass of repression. In a paradoxical way, the superego's immense burden, represented by the insanely heavy knife, becomes James's source of self-liberation. He integrates a part of his superego and is able to progress into a deeper understanding of himself, which is ultimately the goal of this entire adventure. We then arrive at a sort of cemetery, where there are graves for Angela, Eddie, and one for James himself. A grave he must jump into. This can be seen as a symbolic death. As James begins to integrate his shadow, the persona he constructed and identified with at the beginning of his journey starts to unravel and, in a way, die.
Couldn't leave well enough alone, huh? You just had to follow me all the way out here. How many times do I have to kill you?
Eddie? Whoa, Eddie, it's me.
Oh. Hi, James.
Eddie, what are you doing?
What's it look like I'm doing? You fat, disgusting piece of shit, you make me sick. You gonna cry, fat ass? You gonna run to your mama? Waste of skin, why don't you just kill yourself? Well, maybe he was right. Maybe I am nothing but a fat, disgusting piece of shit. But you know what? It doesn't matter if you're smart, dumb, ugly, pretty. It's all the same once you're dead. And a corpse can't laugh!
Eddie.
What's that? You want to talk down to me some more? Tell me to relax? You're just like the rest of them, James.
No, I don't want...
Shut up! You think I'm stupid. You think I don't see it. But you've been laughing at me all along. Ever since we first met. But you ain't laughing now, are you?
Eddie, shaped by a lifetime of being bullied and belittled, has deeply internalized feelings of inferiority, which he projects onto anyone he perceives as slighting him, of course including James. I believe that through this lifetime of bullying and ridicule, Eddie was unable to integrate the darker aspects of his personality, to integrate his jungian shadow. Instead of confronting and reconciling his repressed anger, humiliation, and resentment, he had to suppress these symptoms, his shadow eventually festering and manifesting in violent and destructive ways, violently lashing out at others as a defense mechanism, causing his shadow possession, which we talked about earlier. His profound insecurity fuels his desire to dominate and control others, as he seeks to reverse the power dynamic that has left him feeling powerless for much of his life. Violence for Eddie becomes a means of asserting control, and of course a misguided attempt to reclaim a sense of agency.
You need help, Eddie.
Don't get all holy on me, James. This town called you too. You and me are the same. We're not like other people, don't you know that? Well, you're about to find out.
During our fight with Eddie, he reveals that he shot one of his bully's dog, and him in the leg.
You know what it does to you, James? When you're hated, picked on, spit on, just because of the way you look? Yeah, I ran away after I killed that dog. But you know what? It was fun. It tried to chew its own guts up. Finally died all curled up in a ball. Then he came after me. I shot him too, right in the leg. He cried more than the dog. And now it's your turn, James.
Now, in the remake, we can see in the apartments where we first find Eddie, a room filled with American football paraphernalia. So one of his bullies might have been a football player. And now, knowing the extent of Eddie's violent tendencies, we can assume that he saw a manifestation of this bully in the apartments and killed him. A manifestation which seems to be chasing him through the town.
You just had to follow me all the way out here. How many times do I have to kill you?
I think this fight is a million times better than in the remake. You have to listen to Eddie and make a mental image of where he's going, and at some point he will charge you from behind one of the pig corpses, which I believe are also a representation of his violent tendencies. After killing Eddie, I imagine all sorts of thoughts were running through James's mind, although he looks less horrified after killing someone and more so confused. Outside, James finds a small boat and paddles towards the light in the fog. Much like the man in the story Maria told us, we paddled towards the last level of the game, the hotel, to find that videotape. The hotel itself is beautiful. It's actually quite faithful to the original, although here in the remake, I think it more closely captures what I liked in the original hotel. The fact that this was the special place for a young couple. And this is shown in the changes or improvements made. The gardens are more flush and vibrant, parts of the interior more grand. There are more windows, which let in that weak gray light from the foggy, lonely outside. You feel what the hotel once was, and what it has now unfortunately become. Also, I noticed a cool detail in the hotel. In the main stair area, we see a painting which depicts a house suspiciously familiar to Alessa Gillespie's house from Silent Hill 1. And the painting also looks suspiciously familiar to Christina's World by Andrew Wyeth, the painting which was used as inspiration for Alessa's house. I actually have 2 videos about the artistic inspirations of Silent Hill, if you want to check that out. Although, do keep in mind that I made those a long time ago, and I've gotten a lot better at writing scripts and just doing these videos in general. Anyway, in the piano room, we talked to Laura.
Did I scare you?
Yeah, you did. I guess I deserved it, huh? The fart face that I am.
Maybe. Then again, maybe you're not so bad. Just annoying.
Uh-huh. So, you got any other things planned? I think I saw a dark room back there you could lock me up in.
No. I think you've had enough. For now.
Well, that's reassuring.
Besides, I need your help finding Mary. She's here, isn't she? Come on, tell me.
I wish I knew.
But she said it in her letter.
Wait. So there really is a letter?
Oh. Yeah. Want to read it? Just don't tell Rachel, okay?
Who's Rachel?
She's our nurse. I, took it from her locker.
My dearest Laura, I'm leaving this letter with Rachel to give to you after I'm gone. I'm far away now, in a quiet, beautiful place. Please forgive me for not saying goodbye before I left. Be well, Laura. Don't be too hard on the sisters. And Laura, about James. I know you hate him because you think he isn't nice to me, but please, give him a chance. It's true, he can be a little surly sometimes, and he doesn't laugh much. But underneath, he's a really sweet person. I love you, Laura. I love you like my very own daughter. I wish things were different. I wish we could be happy together, like we talked about. Even so, I know you will have a good life. You're a strong, smart, beautiful girl. Happy 8th birthday, Laura. Your friend, Mary.
Laura, how old are you?
I turned 8 last week.
That means Mary couldn't have died 3 years ago. Could she really be here? Is this the quiet, beautiful place she was talking about?
One of James's delusions falls apart here. Mary did not die 3 years ago. However, this is simply the first step in dismantling James's fantasy. He has still not confronted the harshest truth. Also, have you been noticing James's slow change in appearance? As the game goes on, he looks more and more tired, as if keeping up this fantasy, this persona, is quite literally wearing him out.
Me and Mary talked a lot about Silent Hill. She even showed me all her pictures. She really wanted to come back. She also talked a lot about you, you know? She even...
What? What is it?
Well, it kind of was his other letter. I think the one was for you. The envelope had your name on it.
Did you read it?
I wanted to. This one time, I almost did. Figured you didn't deserve to have it. But then I thought, Mary wouldn't want me to keep it from you. So I just sort of kept it for you. Here.
It's empty. Laura, there's nothing in it.
What? But I didn't take it. I swear.
Well, where is it then?
I must have lost it. I gotta find it.
Laura!
In this room we find some sheet music. Johannes Brahms' Intermezzo, a tender, romantic, but also nostalgic and wistful piece, dedicated to Brahms' lifelong muse Clara, a fitting piece for James and Mary's special place. In a small medical bay in the hotel, we find a patient record labeled MSS, Mary Shepherd Sunderland. You'll see later in the videotape that Mary began to show her first signs of being ill in this hotel. Throughout the hotel, you must find 3 princess statues to solve the final puzzle of the game. These princesses are Snow White, Cinderella, and the Little Mermaid. While there are many fan theories about the meaning of this puzzle, here is my personal interpretation. All 3 princesses, I believe, are meant to represent Mary in some way. Cinderella symbolizes the anxious ticking clock, marking the end of her magic that allowed her to attend the ball. This mirrors Mary's limited time when confronted with her illness. The Little Mermaid reflecting Mary's confinement. Just as Ariel is unable to leave the sea to be with her lover, Mary is trapped in her sickbed, unable to fruitfully, happily live her life with James as she so desperately wants to. And Snow White's apparent death and subsequent resurrection, thanks to the prince's kiss, is deformed in Mary's death and then James's pseudo-resurrection of Mary through the manifestation of Maria. Like I said, there are a lot of theories surrounding the symbolism in this puzzle, so if you disagree, just know that you're wrong and I'm right. Fuck you. After completing this puzzle, we can now go to the room James and Mary stayed at and play the videotape.
Are you taping again? Come on. I don't know why, but I just love it here. It's so peaceful. You know what I heard? This whole area used to be a sacred place. I think I can see why. It's too bad we have to leave. Promise you'll take me again, James?
James looks into his reflection on the TV, calling back to the very beginning of the game, where James first disassociates from himself and his actions, to weave a fantasy of Mary waiting for him in their special place in Silent Hill. When examining the note now, it's completely blank. It was all a manifestation of James's deep guilt and desire to see Mary again. It was simply a product of his deep repression. She didn't die 3 years ago of that damn disease, as James says in the opening monologue. James suffocated her with a pillow not so long ago. Knowing this now, we can see that Pyramid Head killing Maria, or the difficulty breathing motif that has been reoccurring throughout the game, was nothing more than James's superego raining down on him, forcing him to confront reality, forcing him to confront the truth of what he did to Mary.
Hey, there you are. Do you know where Mary is? Come on, talk to me.
Mary's gone. She's dead.
Liar. That's a lie.
No. It's the truth.
She died because she was sick.
I killed her.
Kill her? Why'd you do it? I hate you. I want her back. Give her back to me. I knew it. You didn't care about her. I hate you, James. I hate you. I hate you. I hate you. She was always waiting for you. Why? Why?
I'm sorry. Mary, you know, isn't here. Mary?
James! Where are you? I'm waiting. I'm waiting for you. Please, come to me. Do you hear me? Please, why won't you come?
But where? Where are you?
You're so close now. Please, don't give up. Don't leave me out here, James! James!
We now know that the voice on the radio is not Mary, that it cannot be Mary. Whatever it is seems more desperate after James finds out the truth, almost as if it wants James to consciously ignore what he just saw, to crawl back into his fantasy. I am not totally sure if we are now in an Otherworld version of the hotel, or if this is how the hotel looks in reality, as there are clues that hint at the Lakeview Hotel having been through a large fire. On the wall, we find a quote which I believe mirrors James's state of mind after finding out the truth of what he's done. It says, "There is no healing of thy bruise. Thy wound is grievous." This quote comes from the book of Nahum in the Bible. It refers to the fall of Nineveh, the capital of Assyria, known for its extreme cruelty and oppression. Its destruction will serve as a final and rightful judgment. However, this quote could also fit in with Angela's story, where we could interpret the destruction of Assyria's capital as the act of Angela killing her oppressive, tyrannical, abusive father. And through this door, we will talk to Angela one last time.
Mama? Mama! I was looking for you. You're the only one left. Maybe then I can finally rest. Mama. What's wrong? Wait. You're not my mama. It's you.
I'm sorry, Angela. I think you were right. What we're looking for, it's not here. Not anymore.
Thank you for helping me earlier. But I wish you hadn't. Even Mama said it. I deserve what happened.
No, Angela, that is not true.
Don't pity me. I'm not worth it. Or maybe you think you can save me? Will you love me? Care for me? Heal all my pain? That's what I thought. James. Give me back the knife.
No, I won't.
Saving it for yourself. Have it your way. It doesn't change anything.
It's hot as hell in here.
You see it too? For me, it's always like this.
We get yet another glimpse into Angela's Otherworld, a space entirely engulfed in flames. If interpreted again through a biblical lens, like we did with the last quote, the fire could symbolize a sort of judgment, as a force that burns away all impurity. Angela being swallowed in flames could represent her deep-seated guilt and her view of herself as entirely impure. On the wall we see a disturbing image of a mutilated, possibly castrated man. While this could be interpreted as an attempt to confront or retaliate against an abuser, I believe it's unlikely to bring Angela any form of solace. The presence of such an image itself implies a deeply tormented psyche, and unfortunately, these are the sorts of images that permeate her mind. Moving on, we find 9 red squares. So what are these things that we've been using to save the game? The first time James interacts with one in the original, he says, "Looking at this makes me feel like someone's groping around in my skull." So that would mean that they have some effect on his consciousness. The prevailing theory is that they are essentially meant to symbolically represent the 9 monsters James has to face in order to achieve self-discovery. Pyramid Head, the lying figure, Bubblehead Nurse, Mannequin, Abstract Daddy, Mandarin, Flesh Lip, Maria, and of course the final boss of the game, which we will meet very soon.
James!
Leave her alone. Leave us both the hell alone. I know what you are. I know why I needed you. But it's all over now. I don't need you anymore.
Two Pyramid Heads murder Maria, again. This one seems to particularly affect James, even though he has seen Maria die multiple times. This is most likely because he now realizes what he did to Mary. There is no more repression or denial to protect him, and so by watching Pyramid Head killing Maria, he can only be angry at himself. He realizes now that Pyramid Head is, to some extent, a part of himself, and so there's no need to fight him. There's no need for Pyramid Head to exist at all. While walking down this long hallway, we listen to Mary. We listen to the complex roller coaster of emotions, propelled by being given a time limit on her life.
What do you want, James? Flowers? I don't want any damn flowers. Just go home already. Look at me. I'm disgusting. Between the disease and the drugs, I look like a monster. Well, what are you looking at? Get the hell out of here. Leave me alone already. I'm no use to anyone. I'll be dead soon anyway. It'd be easier if they just killed me. But I guess the hospital's making a nice profit off of me. Why are you still here? I told you to go. Are you deaf? Don't come back. James. Wait. Please. Don't go. Don't leave me alone. I didn't mean what I said. Please. Tell me I'll be okay. Tell me I'm not gonna die. Help me.
Desperate, jumping between anger and sorrow, she lashes out at James, herself, and the whole world, only to break down, pleading for any sort of reassurance, no matter how unrealistic, for a fantasy to escape to, or to simply have someone to share her suffering with, to not be alone. After climbing these stairs, we see her.
Mary? I have missed you so much.
I've missed you too. We can finally be together. Forever.
No.
James. Honey. What's wrong?
I'm sorry. I know you tried,
James, please.
but she's gone. I know that now.
Stop it.
And I can't just keep pretending.
Shut up! What do you want? Do you even know anymore? I'm yours. I'm here for you. So what if I'm not her? I can give you what she never could. I can be better than her. What else do you want me to be? What else can I be?
I am so sorry, Maria. I really am. But this has to stop. It's time to let it go.
No.
What?
I won't let you do this to me. I won't let you go. I can't!
The final boss is Maria, but James now fully accepts that he can never get Mary back, and that Maria cannot ever replace her. Maria is seen in this metal bed frame, much like the flesh lip, symbolizing Mary's confinement during her hospitalization. Although Maria is usually synonymous with the butterfly, seen in her butterfly tattoo on her chest, symbolizing rebirth, now she uses moths as an attack, which are meant to symbolize death and decay, showing that the fantasy of Maria is now gone, or more accurately, that James has rejected said fantasy.
James.
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 Mary.
Hey, handsome.
I'm sorry.
Don't be. I told you. I wanted the pain to end.
Yeah. You did. But that's not why I did it. The truth is, I hated you. I wanted you out of the way. I wanted my life back.
If that's true, then why do you look so sad?
Mary.
It's okay, James. Here.
What is this?
It's what you've been looking for.
When James comes to terms with himself, when he confronts his superego, or integrates his shadow, and is able to process his actions in an honest manner without any form of repression or denial standing in the way of true individuation, he gets Mary's real letter.
In my restless dreams, I see that town. Silent Hill. You promised you'd take me there again someday. But you never did. Well, I'm alone there now. In our special place. Waiting for you to come and see me. But you never do. So, I wait. Wrapped in my cocoon of pain and loneliness. I know, I've done a terrible thing to you. I wish I could change that, but I can't. I feel so pathetic and ugly laying here. Every day I stare up at the cracks in the ceiling, and all I can think about is how unfair it is. The doctor came today. Told me I could go home for a short stay. It's not that I'm getting better. It's just that this could be my last chance. Even so, I'm glad to be coming home. I missed you so much. But I'm afraid, James. I'm afraid you don't really want me to come home. Every time you come to see me, I can tell how hard it is on you. I don't know if you hate me or pity me. Maybe I just disgust you. I'm so sorry. When I first learned I was gonna die, I couldn't accept it. I was so angry. I struck out at everyone I loved. Especially you. And that's why I understand if you hate me. But I want you to know, I will always love you. Even though our life together had to end like this, I still wouldn't trade it for the world. Well, this letter has gone on too long, so I'll say goodbye. I told the nurse to give this to you after I'm gone. Which means that as you're reading this, I'm already dead. But that's okay. I'm not afraid of it anymore. I just hope the pain will end soon, so that you remember me for who I was, and not what the disease made me. I want you to go on. I want you to live, for yourself and for others, like you did for me. James. You made me happy.
In this ending, James manages not only to accept the truth, but also forgive himself. As much as that is possible, I suppose. Whether the world will ever forgive him is another matter entirely. Perhaps he doesn't deserve redemption. Perhaps he doesn't deserve peace. But I, personally, don't believe James is a cold-blooded murderer. I don't believe Mary would see him that way either.
Hook.